Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Ratliff Mandolins Weekly Production Diary. My name is Audie Ratliff and I'm going to start this week's video off by talking just a little bit about finishing. I had made a comment last week's video or before that it was hot and humid here in East Tennessee, and I was just having a heck of a time trying to get finished and that sort of thing taken care of in a decent, easy manner. I had a couple of guys call me on the telephone asking questions about finishing, and actually, believe it or not, I had a couple of emails also about finishing issues that other people were having. So I just thought, you know what, this episode I will just kind of give you a broad overview of exactly what I do from putting the stain on till the time I'm done shooting the finish. And we'll start right here with this jumbled up mess of shelves, which seems to be a catch-all for everything, including all of the stains. Now, one of the questions was about Minwax, and I do use Minwax occasionally, but let's first just talk about what I do to put on a normal, traditional, tobacco brown type sunburst. And I use alcohol-based dyes, and I buy them in these little bottles. You can get these little bottles from several different luthier supply houses, but these bottles will mix with water or with alcohol, and I mix them with alcohol. I usually have on hand yellow, medium brown, dark brown, orange, red, and black. That's what I keep here as a general, oh, and blue. And I keep that here all the time. And I mix it up in these little bottles. They all have adapters on them to fit onto the airbrush. And that's how we apply them for the most part. What I normally do as a standard procedure is that I'll wipe a brown on, usually the medium brown. I'll just wipe it on the mandolin all over. And then I'll start putting the sunburst in with the dark brown. Sometimes I use the medium brown in the airbrush, because if you wipe it on, it kind of gives you a lighter brown than it does when you use the airbrush. If you use the airbrush, believe it or not, that brown will be darker. And I don't know if it's because of the application process or because you're actually just putting more on. Don't really know, but it does seem to be darker on its second application with the airbrush after being wiped on. Oh, and I also need to probably mention that whether it's a light dark brown or dark brown, it says on the bottle that you mix the ratios differently if you want the stain to be darker or lighter. And so I usually just give a squirt down the bottle and pour some alcohol in it. Regular old isopropyl alcohol that I buy at any of the pharmacies or the big box Walmart type stores. And so a lot of it has to do with the mix that you get in this bottle. It's a different ratio of mixture between the alcohol and the stain every time I make a new batch of it. So that has a lot to do with it as well. But anyway, when I'm doing a standard sunburst, I'll wipe a medium brown on and then start with the medium and dark brown to apply a darker sunburst around the edge and bring it in the way I want it. And then I will usually put yellow, sunburst it with the airbrush on the inside of the sunburst. And sometimes you're just done. Sometimes that's enough. But I have found that if you'll give it a burst of orange or red around the outside, the dark part, that will really make those browns really rich. And you can also sometimes put just a skiff of yellow on there. Makes those browns really rich as well. And then you, in the center of the sunburst, the lighter part, you have the yellow that's been shot over top of the brown, so it's not circus yellow. It's a nice, I'll show you. This color right here I think is gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. It's very rich, yellows, orangish almost, to a dark brown. It's just a gorgeous color. And I did that using this procedure that I've just described. That takes care of this shelf right here. That's all of the alcohol-based stuff. I also have, just as part of my arsenal of stain, I have some powdered stuff here. It's in a fish oil jar, but it's actually just some powdered browns. And I purchased this just the other day, and I've not even used it. It's from Mohawk, but it's a ultra penetrating dye stain in Van Dyke brown. I bought that just to see if it would give me a little bit different brown. So that takes care of all the alcohol-based stuff that I use on a regular basis. Now for the Minwax stuff, which is up here on the top shelf, that's usually reserved for when somebody wants a solid color. Somebody come along and say, I just would like just my mandolin to be a nice chocolate brown all over. Then I will go and mix up Minwax to just be one color all over. Very seldom will I try to shoot a sunburst or any kind of fading pattern from one to the other with Minwax. And the reason I do that is because Minwax is a stain sealer. So if I want to, say, go from a Minwax color to a darker outside sunburst, then I'm trying to shoot the dark on something that's basically already had sealer on it. And this alcohol-based stuff, if you're careful, you can do it, but it really don't like to, you know. So I sometimes will take this stuff here or some of the powdered stuff that I showed you earlier, and if I want to do Minwax with just a hint of a sunburst, I may do that by just adding darker pig. I may get the base coat all over it and then put darker pigments in that base coat and go back and put a little bit of sunburst. I've done that a few times. Not a favorite way of doing a sunburst, but it does work. And also, in the end, you can take, I have an airbrush, obviously, and this stuff right here, which is just black lacquer in a can, and I will take that and shoot that into a separate container, you know, right down in a little glass jar, the equivalent of this, and then just shoot raw paint like that. And you can control it with the airbrush a great deal better than you can with the spray cap right here. So I have done that in the past, and I've also done, when I want, you know, just a little hint of black on, especially on the Minwax, which is what we were talking about, because I'm afraid that stain don't really like to lay on top of Minwax. And so if you want it just a hair darker, you can just mix up paint. That's what we're talking about doing. And I have also done that with just lacquer and black drops of paint, and you can get it really thin as well, even thinner than this stuff. So there's any number of ways to go about doing that, but that pretty much takes care of most of the application techniques that I use for the stains. The alcohol-based stuff here, which have a wide range of colors, mostly earthy reds, browns, yellows kind of stuff, and I can put a really pretty sunburst on with only that. If I want a solid, single solid color all over them, that I try to avoid using an airbrush and do anything, just a single solid color, and quite often I will go to the Minwax stuff. And then other than that, your other options are just a hint of paint if you don't get too nuts with it before you put your clear coats on. So that takes care of the stain stuff. But one of the questions was about the fellow said he had a powdery residue on it, on his instrument after he shot the finish. And I can only guess, but I'm pretty sure I know exactly what your problem is. So let's discuss that. Now let me start this part of the conversation by saying that I can only tell you what I was told when I had problems shooting finish, and the things that I did and do now to try to avoid any issues. First of all, we have to talk about the weather. As it turns out that there's a certain amount of water in the air all the time. anywhere you're at, there's a certain amount of water, and that's considered that amount of water per, say, cubic foot of air, or there's going to be X amount of water in it. That's the relative humidity. If there's a lot of water, then it's very humid, very wet, and very humid. The air feels sticky. And if it's very, very dry, very low humidity rate, relative humidity rate, 8 or 9 or 10%, then it's a very dry air. You know, your hands chafe. And so around here in Upper East Tennessee, in the summertime, it's very, very wet. 40, 50, 60% humidity or higher. Very, very wet. And in the wintertime, it's actually pretty dry. Very, very dry and brittle. So, you have X amount of water in the air. Now, as heat expands and cool contracts, and as that water is that, say, a cubic foot of air is contracted, then everything gets denser and denser, and all of the molecules in there get closer and closer together. And when they start running into other molecules of the same type, like two water molecules, they'll go, oh, let's hang out together, and they hook. And oh, let's hang out together, and we'll hook up with these and these. And so as it gets cooler and cooler and cooler, that air contracts, the water molecules collect, and that's why you see fog in the morning. And quite often you'll see fog in the lower valleys, in the valley floor, because it's cooler down there, and that air is condensing, and it's basically forcing the water out of the air, and that's why you get fog. Now, that same process is happening all the time, whether it gets squeezes out enough water that you can see it, as in fog, or if it's just squeezing it down and just there's more water molecules in that cubic foot of air. It doesn't matter. It's still happening all the time, that the air is expanding and contracting, and the amount of water is changing, and it's also changing because the air is expanding and contracting. It's changing per cubic foot of air. So, what happens when you get that blush? It's a flat, milky-like residue that winds up on the finish after you're done shooting and it's drying. What happens is, as you shoot that finish through the air, just like that right there, that spray collects. It's gathering up that water as it's shooting through the air, and then it lands on the surface of your instrument, and those water molecules they collect in there, and you have, let's just say, the surface of the mandolin, and then you have a layer of finish on top of that, and in that layer of finish you have a certain amount of water. Now, under normal circumstances, that little bit of water will leach out over the course of it drying, this coat of finish drying. But if that coat of finish kind of skims over a little bit, and there's enough water in there, then those molecules will start collecting inside that finish coat, and they can't get out hardly as fast, and you can see them. It looks milky. Suddenly you shot a nice crystal clear coat of finish on it, and you can sit there honestly and watch it happen. It'll slowly just milk right up. Now, quite often that'll will come out over the course of the drying period, over the course of the next 10 or 12 hours. It'll come out, it'll leave a little residue on the surface, but quite often you don't really have any permanent damage. But if you lay a good thick coat on, or you have a very, very high relative humidity rate that day, then that water can actually get trapped and stay down there. That finish can just harden all around that water, and the water can't get out. So then you have a milky finish, not something that can be sanded off or will look good later. There's really not a whole lot you can do about it. It's just there, and it ain't coming out. So you want to try to avoid that all the time. When I first started having these issues, and I had no idea what was going on or why it was going on or how to even fix it, I called everybody. I called finishing departments all over the country. I pestered them at Santa Cruz, and I pestered them at Taylor and Martin, and what's going on and why is this happening and everything, and paint manufacturers until I finally kind of got the answers. And some of the best advice I got was from, believe it or not, the National Weather Service, when I finally kind of figured out that it was a moisture related problem. They said, and I was trying to shoot in the cool of the morning. I thought, well, that'd be how to do it, and that was terrible. And a guy on the telephone, he said, no, you shoot in the hottest part of the afternoon at 5 o'clock. That's when the air has heated up. It's expanded as much as it possibly can, and those water molecules are so much farther apart from each other that perhaps, then you're finished, and your spray droplets will go through there without picking up as much water. So what I do is especially in the summertime, in this hot, humid environment, I do not shoot anything before probably 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But this year, even waiting until late in the afternoon hasn't completely cured the issue. And so what I have taken to doing is closing this room off right here, running the air conditioner all day. The air conditioning will cool the air, but it dries it out. That's how it cools the air. It pulls the moisture out of the air. So you've got cool, dry air. And I'll close this smaller room up here. This front room that you see me in a lot is, 10 by 12 or 10 by 11, something like that. And I'll hang a curtain on the door and turn the air conditioner on, just let it run all day and dry this air out, and try to add a bit more lacquer, thinner to the lacquer than I normally do, and that keeps it wetter longer and allows that moisture to come out of the finish better. And they actually make a slow flash thinner that you can buy at your local paint store that keeps the paint wetter longer so that it flows better. And in this particular instance, it will allow those water molecules to come out as well. So that's what I do, and it's still an issue even with those, because I don't have a $50,000 to build a humidity controls paint booth. I have just to get by as best I can with those couple of tricks, and I hope that's helped. So I'll close this part of the conversation off, and real briefly I will clue you in on all of the things that we got done here at the Ratliff Mandolins, a workshop this week, although it's been pitifully poor because it's been a very, very bad week. A lot of outside of influences, broken computers and broken trucks, and issues with helping out kids, and just dozens and dozens. Seems like just more stuff's happened this week than the last 4 weeks all put together. But we did get this much done, and we will start with Monday. Monday I got the frets in Mandolin number 5. I put the first coats of clear lacquer on Mandolin number 4. We had stained it the week before. Monday was time to clean off all of the binding and go over every square centimeter and make sure that it was all okay and ready to shoot the clear. And I got the clear coats, the first coats of clear coat on Mandolin number 4 on Monday. The process is you get your coats on there, you sand it with real fine sandpaper, put more coats of finish on, sand it even finer paper, more coats, even finer paper, till you're pretty much happy that you've got all the finish on and it's nice and flat and clear and all like that. So Monday I had the first coats on. Tuesday I sanded Mandolin number 4 and shot another coat of finish, and then I also spent spent the rest of the day just putting frets in mandolins, and I got the frets in mandolins number 6, 7, and 8. So I put frets in 3 mandolins that day. Wednesday, I had to take Bonnie to the doctor. She had an appointment with the eye doctor. But I did indeed get to pack up mandolin number 1 and mandolin number 2 and get those ready to ship, because we're closing in on the business deal into things with those 2 mandolins. So I put them in a box, packed them up, got everything ready to attach the shipping label to the box, and I put frets in the last mandolin in the batch that needed frets, which was mandolin number 9. And that's all I got done on Wednesday. Thursday, another sanding came along and more coats to finish on number 4. And I think I might have mentioned that my computer broke last week. Now, I actually have a spare computer, which is why you're able to watch this video now, to edit videos and stuff like that. But the main computer that I used broke, and I couldn't take it off to have it fixed because of the folks that I use as computer repair. There was a death in the family, so I couldn't get the computer taken off until yesterday, so I dropped it off. I picked up my white truck, which had been in the mechanics bay for probably 4 or 5 days. And so all I really got done yesterday was more finish on mandolin number 4. And my intentions today, Friday, are to, I think that I will be able to put the last coats finish on mandolin number 4 and just hang it and let it cure. Mandolin number 2, we got the business end of things done with it. And I actually had a pickup called in for yesterday, but they never showed up, and I'm hoping they'll show up today to pick up mandolin number 2 and send it on its way to its owner. And so that's pretty much been my week. I want to thank you for sticking all the way to the end of this video. I sure would like to see you next week on the next episode of the Ratliff Mandolins Weekly Production Diary. Hope to see you then. Hit the like and subscribe button, and bye.